Hi, everybody. Dugras here with Dugras Reports. I'm an average Midwestern dad who likes to travel using points and miles without impacting my family budget in any way. In today's video, I'm going to talk about one such trip that I took on points and miles, and this was a RIP trip to Virginia and West Virginia. I have called it the Charlottesville Blackwater trip. This was an extended weekend, and this was solo travel. I went all by myself back in April of this year, April 2024. Charlottesville, because that was the city that I flew into. Charlottesville is where the University of Virginia is located, kind of on the northwestern part of Virginia that's close to the West Virginia border. Lots of presidential homes and graves in that area and other things of historical interest. Blackwater, because I saw Blackwater Falls in West Virginia, which is the largest waterfall in West Virginia, one of the largest waterfalls east of the Mississippi River, and it was really awesome. That was a key feature to the trip. I use the terminology RIP trip as an acrostic. R stands for rental, as in rental car. I stands for in, as in lodging or hotel. P for plane, airplane. And this trip did consist of all three components, so this was a full-blown RIP trip over a 4-day period. I'm going to break down exactly how I paid for it, what points and miles I used, what cash back I used, etc. Before I dive in, though, on this particular YouTube channel, I talk about finding epic value, including, but not limited to, credit card rewards for the average American. If that sounds interesting to you, please subscribe to this channel and please click the thumbs up button. Let's dive in. Let's take a look at the spreadsheet. I account for every single dollar and cent that I spend on my RIP trips because my goal is that my travel pays for itself. It does not come out of my family budget. Breaking things down by category on this RIP trip, we'll start with food. Of course, I did eat at restaurants at times on the trip. I won't read them all to you. They're listed here in this section. I will point out, you'll notice two of them on the right say PYB in red. Now, what that stands for is pay yourself back. And in this particular case, that's a feature of the Aeroplan credit card issued by Chase. You can use your Aeroplan card to erase travel at a rate of 1.25. In other words, you get 1.25 cents per point, because almost all of those points were transferred over from Chase during various promotions. It actually comes out to roughly 1.625 cents per point. One of my common strategies is to use the Aeroplan card as my card for incidentals at a hotel that has a restaurant. The Kimpton in Charlottesville actually had two restaurants. One was called The Good Sport, which was sort of like a sports bar or pub. And the other one was called the Birch and Bloom, which was a very fancy restaurant. I mean, look at that, $76 with tip. That's possibly the fanciest restaurant I've ever eaten at. Well, definitely the fanciest I've ever eaten at by myself, at least. Got the short rib. It was over $50. So by the time you had drink and tip on there, $76. Interesting little story. It was really good. It was like the best meat I've ever eaten. Unfortunately, I indulged a little too much, and around midnight, I got a lot of heartburn, so it ended up kind of putting a dampener on the meal. What started out so good ended up being like, oh, I shouldn't have eaten so much, but it was $50. I wanted to get my money's worth. I'll come back to how I account for the pay myself back in a little bit, but basically those charges were wiped out. That's $171.12 on food. And then, of course, you have to have snacks when you travel while driving around. And in many cases, this is just stopping at like a vending machine or at a gas station and buying snacks. A couple noteworthy items were I spent my first night at a country inn, and I bought like a candy bar and a can of pop or something like that before I left at the pantry, took it with me. Same trick, was able to pay myself back because I used the Aeroplan card for my incidentals there. And then inside the Kimpton, I took a Coca-Cola out of the wet bar refrigerator, and they were supposed to charge me $3, but they accidentally charged me $4.21. I didn't argue the charge over an extra $1.21. And there's another reason why I didn't. I'll come back to that in a little bit. But if you put it all together, the snacks totaled $33.59. Oh, one more worth mentioning. The Charlottesville Airport, code CHO, does not have a lounge of any kind. Well, there is a private lounge, but it's not part of any airline. It's not part of any priority pass or anything like that. So I just had to pay for my food. Turkey sandwich, like one of those cheap pre-wrapped ones, and a pop, $15.81. Gives you a little bit of appreciation for priority pass or any type of lounge access. Even a bad lounge, at least you get free food. All right, moving on. Now, I did rent a car and drive around, and since I was driving around, of course, I had to pay for gas. And I only stopped on 3 occasions for gas. Nothing particularly important. Adds up to $77.50. Lodging, you'll see, is totally blank, and the total is zero. That's because I paid for all of my lodging either with points or credits that I already had. So my average room cost per night was $0.00. And then anytime you're on a trip, there's miscellaneous things, just like, if you need to buy groceries, if you're going to take a tour, something like that. A few notable ones were I did tour Monticello. That's the home of President Jefferson. That was $99. It wasn't the base level tour. It was the highest level public tour you can get. I think it was called Behind the Scenes. I paid for a Montpelier grounds pass, which I wrote florist in parentheses because I put it on my Aeroplan card hoping I'd be able to pay myself back. Nope, it coded as florists, I guess, because you look at flowers outside. I didn't have enough time to do the inside tour at Montpelier, the home of President Monroe, so I just did the outside tour, made sure to see his grave. And then Highlands is the home of President James Monroe, which was actually my favorite of the 3, although it's a little more of an everyman place. I shouldn't say that, but it wasn't quite as opulent as Monticello or Montpelier, and it was less busy. I got to spend time talking to a tour guide one-on-one. His name was Doug, also, interestingly enough. So those are just some of the highlights. And then you'll see here I wrote CVS Pharmacy in Moorfield, West Virginia, sunglasses. I wear sunglasses when I drive. They're like the kind that go over your regular glasses, and I accidentally left them on the hood of my car when I was pulling out of the Seneca Rocks nature area. I saw them sitting there. I drove really careful, and as I rounded a corner, they flew off and broke. So I had to get a new pair of sunglasses, which was apparently $23.53 at CVS Pharmacy. That was a total of $193.11 for miscellaneous expenses, including the tours of things that I took. All right, and then the transportation category is the last category, last but not least, very important. First of all, I did rent a car. It was $271.09. This was at Enterprise in the Charlottesville airport. Because Charlottesville is a very small airport, there were only 2 rental car companies that you could even choose from. There was Enterprise and whatever their affiliates are, and then there was one other and whatever their affiliates are. I don't remember what it was, but it was not Hertz. I know that for sure. It might have been Avis Budget was the other one, something like that. But I went with Enterprise. It was a perfectly good experience, a little on the costly side, but not too terribly high. Interestingly, I got a mid-size car, and when I got out to the parking lot, the seat wouldn't move. It was like an electric seat that slides backwards and forwards. Someone had put it all the way back, and it got stuck in that position. So, I was having to drive like this with my arms out as far as they can go, and that was just uncomfortable. So I went back in and told them. They swapped me out for a different vehicle. I actually ended up paying the mid-sized car rate, or it might have been full-size car, but I ended up getting an SUV, which was perfectly nice and worked out great. There was valet parking at the Kimpton that I stayed at, $26 plus tax, which came out to $27.38. Interestingly, on their website, it says per night, and I stayed 2 nights there, but they only charged me for 1 night. So that's part of the reason why I didn't argue when they charged me $4.21 for my Coca-Cola in the wet bar rather than $3. So, they overcharged me $1.21 on the wet bar, but they undercharged me $27 on the valet parking. And it was kind of one of those, not much I can do about it, because when you leave the hotel, your charges are all still pending. I don't know what's going to shake out, but for whatever reason, only one night ended up being charged. There was a separate app for leaving a tip for the valet. So as I left a modest tip there. I did pay to upgrade my seat on the last leg of my return flight from Charlotte Douglas, North Carolina, back to Des Moines, Iowa. I wanted to sit in an exit row, which was nice, especially because our plane actually got delayed by like 3.5 hours. Just not long enough to claim the travel delay. And then I paid for parking at the Des Moines airport, which is listed here. Now, you'll notice 3 of these things, the American Airlines seat upgrade, the valet tips, and the valet parking, were all able to be applied to Aeroplan's Pay Yourself Back. And then I have TC written next to the rental car. That stands for travel credit, and that's because I put the charge for the rental car on my Chase Sapphire Reserve, which I upgraded from a preferred to the Reserve just shortly before this trip. I will put a refer a friend link down below for either the Sapphire Preferred or Reserve, description or pinned comment. Check that out if you want to support me. And then I applied almost all of my $300 annual travel credit towards that, posted automatically. So that, in essence, wiped it out. Now, if you're wondering, I do pay all of my annual fees out of my cashback travel account. Therefore, the annual fees are not charged to my family budget. So when I have a credit or a coupon from a credit card, I don't have to account for it a second time. I've already used my travel budget money to cover that. Now, I also have the non-cash expenses listed here. How I stayed for $0 on lodging. First night, I stayed at a country inn in Charlottesville, and that was 20,000 choice points. Remember that choice points transfer from Citi to choice at a 1-to-2 ratio. So functionally, that was only 10,000 Citi points on my Citi, well, the card formerly known as the Premier, now known as the Strata Premier Card. And that was the night of a home softball game. So the cash rate was $546. So that comes out to approximately 2.73 cents per point on the choice hotels side of things, which would be more than 5 cents per point on the Citi side of things. It'd be about 5.4 cents per point on the Citi side of things. I also stayed at a tiny house Airbnb in Davis, West Virginia. That was close to Blackwater Falls when I had that portion of the trip. Part of the rationale there was it was a very rural area, and the nearest decent hotel was an hour to an hour and a half away, and it was a Holiday Inn Express. But I really didn't want to stay that far away. Part of the reason was I wanted to go to Blackwater Falls, and I wanted to go to another place called the Fairfax Stone, which is a super nerdy monument that has to do with the original surveying of Maryland back when it was a colony. I won't go into details here, but I do have a whole separate channel called Dugras Nostalgia. I'll put a link in the description box. If you just want more info and the super fun, super nerdy stuff from my travels and history and that kind of stuff, check out that other channel. I have some videos about that on there. I got an Airbnb gift card for about $1,000. Still had like 700 or 800 left on it. So I dipped into that Airbnb gift card. Since I had already paid for that with points, I don't have to deduct it from any sort of cash account at this time. It was $274 used from that Airbnb gift card, which I had previously bought. At this point, I've still got about $500 left on that original gift card from 3 or 4 years ago. And then the Kimpton, I paid for that in 2 different ways. I used approximately 26,000 IHG points to stay at the Kimpton. I have the IHG Premier Business Credit Card. I'll also put a refer a friend link for that down below if you want to support me in that way. I say estimate because unfortunately I didn't take a screenshot beforehand. I couldn't find the exact amount, but I'm based on some calculations I did and what was taken out of my account. I'm pretty sure it was right around 26,000 points. Um, one night was with points. The other night was my free night certificate because that Premier card, which is issued by Chase, comes with an annual free night certificate. The cash rate was $225 for the nights I was there, which comes out to approximately 0.87 cents per point. I value IHG points on the redemption side at around 0.7 cents per point. So I think anything that's 0.7 or more is pretty good, especially considering you can frequently buy those points for half a penny each. And then for airfare, American Airlines round trip, this was a web special, 25,000 miles round trip. I actually already had almost the exact amount of American Airlines miles. In fact, I had to wait till I got just a couple more points to make the redemption when I booked it 3 or 4 months ago. The cash rate round trip would have been $535, so that comes out to 2.1 cents per point. Not bad for domestic travel. All right, let's look at some totals here. Bear in mind before reading the totals, uh, all of the airfare was completely covered with points except for the taxes and the seat upgrade. And all of the lodging was covered either by points or by that previously purchased Airbnb gift card. So when I give you these totals, we're only talking food, snacks, gas, miscellaneous, and transportation. And the total of all those put together comes out to $853.40. You'll remember I used Pay Yourself Back on the Aeroplan card for several things that coded as travel, which came out to $184.20 taken off that total. And then my car rental was covered functionally by the $300 travel credit on the Chase Sapphire Reserve. Of that, I used $271.09. So that brings us to a subtotal for the trip of $398.11. Now, I think most people would agree $398, we'll just call it less than $400, is pretty good for a 4-day weekend where you get to see presidential homes, graves, cool monuments, a really awesome waterfall, get to stay in a tiny house, get to stay in an upscale Kimpton. But I'm not satisfied with that. The frugal budget traveler in me says I need to make that go away. So I do have a special travel account. This is a savings account with Charles Schwab Bank where all of my cash back rewards go. That would be cash back credit card rewards and any bank account bonuses. They just go in that account to be used for situations like this, situations where you can't directly pay with points. That way I don't impact my family budget whatsoever for any of my travels. So I'm going to write myself a check functionally, or it might just be a EFT, moving the $398.11. Whoops, I put a negative sign I'm not supposed to. Moving the $398.11 from my travel savings account to my family budget, and that gives us a final total here of $0.00. Ah, magnifique. What a beautiful number. So what were my favorite things on this trip? Well, I'll break into 2 categories. The favorite thing overall, then the favorite history-related thing. My favorite thing overall was the drive to and seeing Blackwater Falls in West Virginia. I had a couple things going for me. The weather was beautiful and completely cooperative. I don't know what the temperatures were, but I would guess in the 60s all the times that I was there. It never rained on me while I was in West Virginia. It had rained like several days before, so all the little tiny creeks and rivers were swollen. You could see the flowing water right next to the road. And then when I got to Blackwater Falls itself, it was very full. I saw it from one side of the falls on the first evening I arrived, and the next morning I went back and saw it from the other side, a little higher up, and there was a local couple who said it's a lot fuller than it usually is, and you're getting a really great view. of it here today. And it was just very peaceful, very relaxing, good to commune with nature in that sense. And the tiny house I stayed at, right next to the falls, not right next to, but like a 5-minute drive away, just kind of brought it all together. And then my favorite thing in terms of history was seeing Highlands, which was the home of James Monroe, a lesser known presidential home than something like Monticello or Montpelier. And because it was lesser known, smaller crowds, didn't feel as commercial, felt very personal. And like I said, got to geek out with one of the tour guides for probably 20 to 30 minutes. So there you have it. Let me know what you think. And if you want to see more of my travels, not so much the points and miles side, check out Dugras Nostalgia. I will mention before I go that if you like this type of breakdown, you would love to be a Dugras diehard. A Dugras diehard is a channel member. It's only $3 a month, no commitment. You can join or leave anytime. And I do have about 30 members only videos that go into even more details on points and miles, often things that are too sensitive or too personal for the YouTube algorithm. Click join on any of my videos to join. As always, may your spending be frugal and may your points be plenteous. Thanks for watching.